All right, here we go with the official UFC 215 weigh-ins. We are in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and first scale is the former UFC flyweight title challenger Wilson Hayes, coming off that loss to Demetrius Johnson back in April. He steps on the scale, rocking the socks, looking confident.
125 even.
And he hits his mark. That's championship weight for Wilson Hayes, looking to get back on track against Henry Cejudo. A battle featuring two former flyweight title contenders. Wilson Hayes getting us rocking and rolling this morning here in the City of Champions.
Sara Morris.
Up next is Sara Morris stepping onto the scale. She meets Ashley Evans-Smith in preliminary action. Bantamweight fighter fighting out of Kelowna, British Columbia.
135.
135 for Sara Morris. They call her Cheesecake. Doesn't look like she had many of those leading up to this fight. Appears to be in great shape. The 29-year-old Canadian. Hitting her mark. One of several Canadians competing on this card. Sara Morris, Cheesecake, is now official. Prior to her fight against Ashley Evans-Smith. And speaking of Canadians, here comes another one. Here's Mitch Clark. Mitch Clark meets Alex White tomorrow night on the UFC 215 prelims. They call him Danger Zone. He is currently fighting out of right here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Originally from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. 31 years young is Mitch Clark, looking to snap a two-fight losing streak.
155.5.
And he hits his mark, 155.5 for the Canadian. Mitch Clark puts up the two guns, appears to be in great spirits, very excited about today's proceedings as he officially makes weight. A little wink and a nod as well for the commission here in Alberta. So far, so good.
Gavin Tucker.
As we are underway, 11 fights in total. Now time for Gavin Tucker, the 10-0 Canadian who burst onto the scene back in February. He fights out of Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. Born in Ship Cove, Newfoundland. And he is undefeated, looked very good in his debut back in February against one Sam Cecilia. Here comes Gavin Tucker, a rising star, the Newfoundland Terror, 10-0. And he hits his mark, 145.5, a bit of a dramatic pose, or pause, I should say there, but he is good to go, and he is scheduled to meet Rick Glenn tomorrow. He is one of the bright young stars of the UFC and one of the bright young stars coming out of Canada right now. That's Gavin Tucker making his weight. We welcome in Ilir Latifi. He meets Tyson Pedro tomorrow, the Swedish sledgehammer himself. 205.5 for Ilir Latifi. He has not won since his victory over John Vellante at UFC 196. Followed that up with a loss to Ryan Bader. in September of last year, and he has not fought since then. He was supposed to fight back in June against Antonio Rogerio Nogueira, but Nogueira pulled out due to an injury, so he returns to action tomorrow night against Tyson Pedro on the pay-per-view main card. We say hello now to Ashley Evans-Smith. Again, she meets Sarah Morris on the prelims. 5-2 as a professional, fighting in the bantamweight division, currently fighting out of Lake Forest, California. Always interesting hairstyle for Ashley Evans-Smith. 135.5 for Ashley Evans-Smith, looking to pick up her third UFC victory. She is coming off a loss back in April to Ketlin Vieira. And how about that? Speaking of Ketlin Vieira, there she is. We welcome Ketlin Vieira to the scale. The undefeated Brazilian will meet Sara Mcmann in an important women's bantamweight fight, fighting out of Manaus in Brazil. She is 2-0 in the UFC, 8-0 overall.
136 even. Right here.
And she hits her mark, 136 even for the Brazilian. 26 years young. Representing Novo União Manaus is Ketlin Vieira.
Alex White.
We are rolling along here this morning. Here comes Alex White. They call him the Spartan. 11-3 as a professional. Hasn't won since his February of 2016 victory over Artem Lobov. Steps on the scale. 155.5 for Alex White. Looking to rebound following his loss to Tony Martin back in January of this year. He meets Canada's own Mitch Clark. If you're joining us late, pause that thought. Here's an interesting one. Here comes El Nino, Gilbert Melendez, looking to make his featherweight debut on Saturday. He steps onto the scale in a matter of seconds as a featherweight for the very first time in a long time.
146 even.
And he hits his mark. 146 even for Gilbert Melendez. First time as a featherweight in the UFC, the former Strikeforce lightweight champion. One of the very best. Looking to reinvent himself now as a featherweight in the UFC. Has not won a fight since UFC 166. How amazing is that? Has lost his last 3 in a row to Anthony Pettis, Eddie Alvarez, and Edson.
No, we gotta go over some weight and stuff. Sorry, not quite yet.
Eddie Alvarez and Edson Barbosa, a bit of confusion there for Gilbert Melendez, but he looked good. He looked good as he stepped onto the scales, a 146-pounder. He, of course, meets Jeremy Stevens tomorrow night. Now we say hello to Rick Glenn. 145.5 for Rick Glenn. They call him the Gladiator. He meets Gavin Tucker, the undefeated Gavin Tucker, in an interesting featherweight bout tomorrow night. Looking to pick up his second UFC victory.
Cajun Johnson.
The former World Series of Fighting featherweight champion, Rick Glenn. And how about this? Here comes Cajun Johnson. No stranger to the headlines. Appears to be in great spirits. Huge smile on his face. Look how happy this man is.
155 even.
150. Wow, look at Cajun Johnson. Looking like a kid on Christmas who just got the present of his dreams. A massive smile on his face. Praising the heavens. We have not seen Cajun Johnson in a little under 2 years. September 26th of 2015 to be exact. There he is. So happy to be here. And he made headlines back in May when he was at the fighter retreat and had some words about the current Reebok deal. But Cajun Johnson, who's one of the more socially conscious UFC fighters, appears very happy to be back. Now we say hello to Jeremy Stephens, a little heathen, who
146 even.
hits his mark, 146 even. As our own Dave Doyle reported a couple of days ago, Stephens postponing his wedding in order to take this high-profile fight against Gilbert Melendez. How about that? Who is that? That is Jeremy Stephens. Jeremy Stephens hitting his mark. He's lost his last 2 in a row. Last time he won was back in May of 2016 against one Henan Barral. That's Jeremy Stephens, so that means his fight against Gilbert Melendez is now official. We are moving along at a blistering pace here. We now say hello to the former Olympian Sara Mcmann, who steps onto the scale. 11-3 as a professional, has won her last 3 in a row.
135.5.
135.5. Sara Mcmann looking to win her 4th in a row. She meets Caitlin Vieira tomorrow, and she is hoping to get back into that title picture. You'll recall that she once lost to Ronda Rousey back at UFC 170, and now she returns. Sara Mcmann looking to cement her place atop the bantamweight
Valentina Shevchenko.
division contenders, and she's now representing a new team, Team Alpha Male, so that is an interesting wrinkle heading into that fight. And now it's time to say hello to the lone title challenger tomorrow night. We'll get to that in a second. We say hello to the Bullet, Valentina Shevchenko. She meets Amanda Nunez in the new main event for UFC 215. The original main event was supposed to be Demetrius Johnson versus Ray Borg. That fight was canceled late last night, so now it's Shevchenko versus Nunez.
133.5.
She never has trouble making weight. In fact, she probably should be fighting at 125. She hits her mark, 133.5 for Valentina Shevchenko. Oh, so close to finally becoming a UFC champion. They were supposed to meet back in July at UFC 213. The fight was canceled just hours before the main event due to a sinus issue that Amanda Nunez was suffering from. Rebooked the fight for this card, and it's interesting, UFC President Dana White saying that he would not headline another card with this fight, and now he is forced to do so after Ray Borg suffered from a virus infection yesterday and was forced to withdraw from UFC 215, thus canceling his main event fight against Demetrius Johnson. What a turn of events here in Edmonton. We'll tell you more about that, but for now we'll say hello to former UFC lightweight champion Rafael dos Anjos. Now fighting as a welterweight. 170 even for Rafael dos Anjos. He revealed earlier this week that he was offered a title shot against Tyron Woodley, the current champion, if Damian Maia did not accept the fight at UFC 214. Maia, in the end, accepted the fight, lost the fight. Dos Anjos now thinks that he is oh so close to fighting for the belt, and who can blame him? If he was up next, if Maia wasn't ready, you'd think that a win on Saturday over Neil Magny would seal the deal for him. That remains to be seen. We've yet to see Neil Magny on the stage. Now here comes Amanda Nunez wearing a sort of breathe right strip on her nose. One presumes that has something to do with her sinus issue. She is the reigning defending UFC women's bantamweight champion. She successfully defended the title back in December against Ronda Rousey, effectively retiring, at least for now. Ronda Rousey won the belt back at UFC 200. She steps on the scale.
135 even.
And she hits her mark. Look at that smile. Amanda Nunez appears to be in great spirits. 135 even, and if you compare her body language, her demeanor, to when she stepped on the scale back in July, there appears to be a great difference in her mood. She appears to be in a much better place, happier, smiling, and certainly her thoughts are with everyone back home in Florida. She is flanked by her longtime coach, or at least her coach of recent years, Conan Silveira, of American Top Team, thinking about everyone back home, bracing for the hurricane that is about to hit the Sunshine State. Now we say hello to Henry Cejudo.
125.5.
And he hits his mark as well. The former Olympic gold medalist Henry Cejudo appears to be in less of a good mood than Amanda Nunez, but nevertheless, he hits his mark, and that means that his fight against Wilson Hayes is now official. We say hello now to Luis Henrique,
24.5.
who hits his mark. The Brazilian, 10-3, meets the Canadian Arjun Buller tomorrow. KLB, Luis Henrique. Fighting out of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. The big man looking to get back on track. Bye-bye to you, Luis. Let's pause that thought and welcome in the former Canadian Olympian back in the 2012 games, Arjun Buller, stepping onto the scale. Told you about him moments ago.
$239 even.
And he hits his mark, 239 even for Arjun Buller, the gold medalist in the 2010 Commonwealth Games. And here comes the Brazilian Adriano Martins. He will open up the card against Cajun Johnson, 35 years old, fighting out of Manaus.
$156 even.
He hits his mark, 156 even for Adriano Martins, coming off a split decision loss to Leonardo Santos back at UFC 204. He has not fought since October of 2016, so it has been exactly 11 months since his last fight. Tiriana, this is a first. This is incredible. Look at Tyson Pedro, a showman. You have to appreciate that. Stepping onto the scale, here comes Tyson Pedro. How about that?
205.5.
205.5 for Tyson Pedro with a smile on his face. Look how happy this young man is. Coming out to a little Rihanna, Wild Thoughts. We're good. Thank you for asking, Tyson. And here comes the last fighter left to weigh in, Neil Magny, with a smile on his face.
169.5.
And he hits his mark. 169.5 for Neil Magny. He is official. His fight against Rafael dos Anjos now official. And that means all 22 fighters scheduled to compete at UFC 215 are official. Of course, we're not getting the Ray Borg versus Demetrius Johnson fight. An unfortunate turn of events, but as far as today's weigh-ins are concerned, all 22 fighters have successfully made weight. Later on today, we'll have the ceremonial weigh-ins from the Rogers Place Arena in Edmonton. Plenty more coverage to come as far as UFC 215 is concerned, so please do stick around and keep it locked to MMAfighting.com. Appreciate you joining us. We'll talk to you later today from the ceremonial weigh-ins.